Well, hello, everybody. This is Reanimated, podcast about all things zombie, undead, otherwise, moldering in or outside the grave. My name is Stuart, one of your hosts. I'm coming at you from California. This morning we have a full bench, as it were, with H.A. Conrad coming at us from the Nutmeg State of Connecticut. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you all?
Great. How's that fresh nutmeg?
It's fantastic. And they actually got a weird little like ice storm. So it's like that kind of, it's a bit sort of like that winter idyllic thing going on up here. So, as you crunch around in the snow. So just up
Nice.
here for a few days, and yet we still have a rowing machine here. So can't get away from that too long. Because my mother-in-law has one too. So, things still kicking along and not drinking enough coffee yet, but
Terrific. And up in the northern climes, coming to us from Seattle is Kyle. Kyle, how are you today?
I'm back. Feels good. I missed you guys last week.
We missed
you too. Yeah. And I think you've been keeping up with All of Us Are Dead, so we can all jump in when we get past our news, but we do have a couple of news items this morning. And the first of them, I know that H.A. Conrad is a huge fan of this character from Zombieland Double Tap and wants to talk about this. So go ahead, H.A.
Not really, no. So this is something that had been raised in the fall, and there had been like an interview about it. Just about there being a spinoff with Zoe Deutsch's character, the character of Madison. And so it keeps being brought up. So maybe this is something that that's really going to happen. It seems like people are kind of excited about it. I think her character specifically was, sort of directly
offensive to your sensibilities.
It was, but I think it's supposed to be, obviously, and it's like a commentary on current things. But in any case, Ruben Fleischer continues to say that he's really down for the idea of a spinoff starring Zoe Deutsch. And so, I think that it's maybe this is just trying to get people excited about something and maybe gain some traction. So it feels like, I think it was raised a couple of times in the fall, like in October, and then this is popping up again. So he did this in like a more recent interview. So I guess he's really excited about it. I don't know. What do you two think about it? I don't know. Kyle, do you have any feelings about her character specifically? Did you see the sequel?
I never saw the sequel. Zombieland kind of felt to me like this weird little like lightning in a bottle kind of movie where it shouldn't work. Like if you described it to somebody, it sounds like it shouldn't work, but it did. And it kind of like in a way launched the career of Jesse Eisenberg. I think like he wasn't really, it was pre-Social Network, his role in the Superman movies and that kind of stuff. And I really loved that film. And I just didn't understand where they would go with a sequel or why a movie that was so kind of jokey and self-referential needed a sequel. And so I kind of avoided it. I know I heard it was pretty good. It got decent reviews. I don't know what the two of your thoughts were on it, but I was just kind of like, I just want to preserve my feelings toward the original. And so I kind of avoided seeing Double Tap when it came out. So I don't have any context for this news at all, I don't think.
Okay. I thought Double Tap was okay. It was definitely, I think you didn't necessarily have to have a sequel, but I think there were some cool things that they did with it. But she is specifically a character that is not palatable. She is very much like of the, she's like kind of shallow and, but she plays
she's a dumb blonde.
She plays it to the hilt. And so
it's kind of interesting that Fleischer would say this is his favorite character. Like,
I know, right?
Such a trope. She was funny. It was laugh out loud funny. And I actually kind of enjoyed the character too. But at the same time, you got to just be like, well, there's nothing original about this character.
No. And I thought it was more comic relief versus a character that could hold a whole show together, right? So I don't know that I would center a storyline around the character, but maybe I don't know. But he also said that he's definitely down for another film, a direct sequel with Woody Harrelson
Well,
and
it sounded like Woody
Eisenberg.
Harrelson was pushing for that with
Yeah.
getting the originals back together. And that could
And
be
I think he said so that would be something he'd be on board with too. So I don't know. Maybe he's just trying to like garner interest, support, see what happens. So we'll have to keep an eye on this and see if anything actually develops. But I think this is a little bit I don't know. I think it's a bit of a reach at this moment in time, but we'll see. And then there was an Italian zombie movie called Don't Kill Me that has been advertised.
It's on Netflix now, apparently, and it does seem a little bit. It's a little bit art housey feeling to me, at least.
It's also not straight zombie. It's like there's a vampire element to it, and it's an Italian film. Is it independent? I don't know. I haven't read too much. I mean, I read a bit about the story, but I didn't see much about the making of it. Do you have any idea, Stuart?
I don't have a lot of background on the making of it. I learned about it from Bloody Disgusting's newsletter, which I'm a proud subscriber of. And I need to go back and read what they had to say about it. But I just kind of started looking at the trailer and thought, well, this looks interesting. It's definitely a different take on the genre, unlike our last Italian zombie film, which was a little more straightforward. It had a question mark in it. The End of the World, I think it was called. So this does look a little different. I got, unfortunately, some vibes of what was the name of that?
Warm Bodies?
No, Zombie Voodoo, that French movie we watched. Just because this, I think, is going to have more of an undead and murdery vibe to it. But was that Voodoo Child or something? That movie?
But they're also like they're definitely pushing the horror teenage romance aspect of this.
Yeah,
so
there's definitely there is a little Warm Bodies, but I don't think it's going to be a zomcom like that was.
Oh no, I don't think so either. But anyway, it looks like Warner Brothers has some involvement in this, so maybe they partnered with an Italian film company on getting this released. So that's not independent, or maybe it was independent and then they got on board. But anyway, I mean, I'm happy to take a look at it, but I don't know that I necessarily have a desire to see a like Twilight zombie film or something like that. What it kind of it's giving me that vibe basically. Yeah. So we'll see. I don't know. What do you think, Kyle?
I think the trailer is beautiful. Beyond, in Italian horror has a proud history of being extremely visually engrossing and disturbing. But beyond that, there's not enough here for me to kind of figure out my level of interest.
Teeth into.
Yeah, I'm intrigued, but not much more. Yeah.
And then DayZ, it was announced earlier this month. It's DayZ is an older video game, 10 years old or so, that is going to be adapted into a film by a couple of different British film production companies, which is I have very low expectations of this. Looking at these guys' body of work, it doesn't look like they've done big projects before. I don't know if you guys have heard of DayZ, but at first it was a mod for a military simulation game, and then it kind of broke off and did its own thing and became its own game. And it's basically a sandbox where you are in this landscape, painstakingly designed giant piece of countryside with towns and woods, and that whole landscape is like peppered with zombies. Some of them are fast, as I recall, and some of them were slow. And then it's a multiplayer game, so other humans are also in there as survivors, and terrible things happen to you as a player because you want to just kill the other survivors to take their food because there are like starvation mechanics in the game, and so you have to like go into the cities to either scavenge food where you could get shot by other people, or you just shoot those people and take whatever food they might have. And I think you can even eat other people in the film.
Wait, is this the one where you have to like steal firewood and stuff like that? I feel like you told me about this.
There have been a few different takes on this kind of game. There was also H1Z1, which turned into something else. There have been. This was the original though. This was a big, like kind of a big zeitgeist moment for zombies and video games back in, I would say 2011 or 12.
AZ was like, this is one that was in like beta for like 8 years, right?
Yeah.
Like, you had to like, yeah, it wasn't an officially released game. It was like early access for like a ridiculously long time.
Before early access was a thing.
Yeah. And for a while it was super buggy. And so like half of the fun of it was just like glitching in different ways. And then eventually it got more stable over time until eventually they finally released it as a game. But by that point, I feel like everyone who wanted to play it had played it. And so it kind of landed with a thud by the time they tried to actually sell it for money.
Yeah, they might have missed the moment a little bit, but
Yeah.
I think it made enough money to there's still a lot of people who played it. I think it broke some records for like concurrent numbers of players on Steam. And Chandler Riggs used to stream himself playing DayZ also. I remember seeing, like, when I learned that he was a Twitch streamer, this was what he was playing a lot of the time. This and Goat Simulator. But, you know. Anyway, so DayZ might be made into a film. Let's all not hold our breath. But there's some potential there. It's just, I don't know, because they're also in the announcement. They're like this, rich tapestry of story. I'm like, it didn't have it was just a bunch of people murdering each other on the internet, like with like environmental risks. So we'll see. I'm not sure what original story they might come up with, but they're, of course, against that tableau, you can build a cool narrative, but there isn't one there baked in already. It's like you're gonna have to work on it. And then, Kyle, do you want to talk about this last link that we're going to have in the show notes, the Scarlet Witch related piece?
The only thing that I want to say here, and so the news here is that in the Super Bowl spot for In the Mountains of Madness, which is the upcoming Doctor Strange sequel, directed by Sam Raimi, which I'm very excited for. I think he's going to bring a really strong, like, kind of horror vibe to it, which fits well with the Doctor Strange kind of world and vibe. There was a shot of the zombie Scarlet Witch from Marvel's What If, which we discussed on the podcast back in the summer last year sometime, I think. And the only thing that I wanted to say here is that I just continue to be totally in awe of Marvel's planning and execution for its cinematic universe. I mean, I've been watching Peacemaker with my wife, and she enjoyed it. And so we went back and watched Suicide Squad, or The Suicide Squad, the newer one with James Gunn. And as we were looking for that movie in HBO Max, she was like, wait, are there 2 movies both called Suicide Squad? And I was like, yeah, this one like wasn't very good and nobody really liked it. It had Will Smith in it. And then this one is like, people liked it a lot more. And and like, even just explaining it, I felt like so dumb. And it's just right after, like, a couple of months after I'd gone into like really exhaustive detail with her about the whole Justice League debacle and all the stuff that happened with that film and its long and like bizarre road to multiple releases. And it just really like struck me that like DC's universe is like such a mess, even if there's these little pieces of gold in it. And then Marvel can be like, okay, we're making a spin-off TV series that's supposed to just be, some fun storylines that like are thought exercises, and all of this is totally hypothetical, except actually, no, bam, it's not. Like, we're going to bring Elizabeth Olsen back for the Doctor Strange movie for, who knows how big of a role. And, she might be a zombie from one of these universes. And I'm just totally blown away. And it opens a lot of doors for other, kind of character remixes from that What If universe to leak into the regular Marvel universe that we know and love. Like, I think Star-Lord T'Challa is officially out, just due to Chadwick Boseman's sad passing. But maybe the Agent Carter from that universe, or the Natasha Romanoff from that universe, who was pretty badass from the Zombies one could come back. So I'm just in awe. Like, the planning, the large scale planning is just absolutely mind blowing to me. And I don't think anyone has ever done anything like this, where there's a decades long storyline across movies, TV shows, and you can't actually fully grasp the continuity
No, and that's
unless
the
you
thing is that
unless
the
you keep up.
continuity, just the logistics of making that continuity smooth and not have conflicts, and it is impressive. And I remember, like being, when they started to go in with Agents of Shield and being like, oh my gosh, they actually are paying attention to what happened in these films, and it was just like, there was like a stopgap between different releases, and it is incredibly complicated. And well, I mean, it makes DC. It really is kind of sad because I feel like DC should hire whoever is doing the
Kevin
Marvel
Feige, I
universe.
think
Yeah,
he's
I
Yeah,
think it's
busy.
I think it's the top of the ladder.
And wouldn't you
I,
love to? Wouldn't you pay to see Kevin Feige's crazy wall in his like office that only he can
oh,
get
I
into?
know, it's crazy, but yeah, no, I have not seen the trailer for this, but I was pretty excited when you talked about it. So I'm glad one of us saw it. So
Yeah.
we'll have to check it out. But no, I think it maybe, I mean, maybe it does open the door for I would be excited to see Natasha Romanoff from that universe come in. But maybe that's just wishful thinking, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
There's a lot of rich stuff to plumb from that brief anthology What If series. So yeah,
And we've just plumbed quite a lot from a literally. I don't want to overemphasize it. It was a perhaps less than 1 second shot from the trailer, so like we could be totally off base with all of this, but it certainly got people talking.
the
It's
zombie
fun to imagine it though.
Marvel zombies in What If started as a 1 second clip of Captain America, and then it turned into a whole episode. So, when does the movie come out? Do we know?
I mean, it comes out, I think in May.
Yeah, it's this year
So
sometime.
I think it's in May. I think it's going to be sort of the start off of the summer season. So,
Star Wars Day, May 4th.
Oh,
oh,
no.
really? Oh,
Okay.
nice.
Well, they're not. Disney's just competing with itself now.
Yes.
Fine. I mean, it was inevitable when you have that many IPs, I guess. All right, so that's our news. Lots of great things out there to enjoy. In here, however, in the school in Hyosan High School, we have 2 episodes to get through today, episodes 8 and 9. That's kind of weird that they don't have names, but also I guess not, because whatever. What are you going to call these episodes? We left our heroes banging on the door to the roof while a Black Hawk helicopter had landed, or was like hovering right on the edge of the roof to pick up the one survivor who was out there. His name is Cholsul. He had heard them banging on the door and had kind of made up his mind not to open it because he had a flashback of Yoonji, his nerd friend, saying, I wish everybody would die. And so he's like, I think we're supposed to take away from that. He's subscribed to this. He's like, no, they don't deserve to be rescued, even if he thinks they're real, or he might think that they might be mixed in with zombies. And he tells the soldiers, no, well, it's just me. Let's get out of here.
Yep.
And
He even sees them like, well, we'll get to it in a minute. But he's, he's made some very specific decisions here that
he
are
has
not
cemented his fate by the end of this sequence. Yes. And at first I was like, yeah, Chulsul, don't worry. You don't have to go downstairs with Yoonji. She's being insane and worried about Facebook posts. You should stay up here on the roof where it's safe. So I was totally within his camp, but then these actions undermine all of.
Well, I could even, I mean, well, I could even get on board with him not necessarily laying them up because he's scared that they might be bitten or whatever, and that's fine. But then, there's ways to figure that out. But I think it was a bit of a cliffhanger though too for the last episode, because Gwi-nam had come up the stairs in very dramatic fashion. They are really concerned because Bear-su had thrown him off a building, so that didn't stick. And he was, he comes up the stairs carrying the zombie girl, and he's terrifying and
fucking awesome.
Yeah,
it's
pretty awesome.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm like totally team Gwi-nam at this point. I'm like, my boy, he's getting thrown out of windows and he's climbing back up. He gets thrown off the roof and he's climbing back up. He's just constantly. I'm actually like on team Gwi-nam these days. That guy has so much charisma.
I appreciate that you like his perseverance, but what's his motivation? He
he wants Chong Sung's eye. I mean, he keeps talking about it. He wants the eye.
okay.
He wants his $2.
I kind of wish we knew more about Gwi-nam's like home life, his upbringing. Why is he this way? Why is he so angry? And is it purely about all of his relationships at school? Because that's all we really know about him.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, I think usually there's more going on, but I think in general he's treated like the dumb muscle, and he's tired of being the dumb muscle, and now he's got power, and he had been kind of, being just definitely part of this bullying crowd, and he was the person that got to carry out a lot of the punishments and all that kind of thing. But now he's in a position of power and he's going to use it. But I agree, though. I think that he makes a very good enemy and kind of a cool enemy. So I'm on board as far as that's concerned. He's a little odd, though. So I don't know that
the half bees, as they start to be referred
As
to,
Daesu calls them.
as the characters get more familiar with them, they tend to have kind of intense fixations, kind of irrational fixations on goals. So that it's the same with Nayan. Is that no, not Nayan.
Namra?
Namra, thank you. She had that phone thing going on. That predated her zombification, but like seemed to intensify with the zombification.
Oh, you're talking about Yoonji, I think.
Oh, Yoonji, yeah.
So
yeah.
Sorry, so in any case, like that might be driving some of this. I do think he's like well and truly insane in there, even if he can still speak and move around.
The other thing I was really hoping for in these 2 episodes, and maybe it's still to come, I don't know. I want a showdown between some of the half bees. We got a little bit of it here in this
exact scene. Yeah, I think honestly, this scene kind of oversold that to me, because they had it. I mean, Namra just starts to turns quite quickly, chokes out Gwi-nam easily, and then throws him down the stairs. Right, and it's like. Right. Wow. Okay. She's born fully formed as a badass half bee. But then later
we don't see as much, and that's confusing to me.
In the subsequent episode, she takes we can get to it, but let's just address it.
Yeah,
she takes like a minute of screen time to turn, and then she kind of does a really weak stick attack. She does eventually pull it off, but it seems like, wait, this first scene, she basically picks him up with one hand and throws him down the stairs. And the next one, it's way harder for her in the next episode.
My only thought was that she had a little bit more leverage in this one because she was standing above him. So maybe that helped. But what I was really hoping for in these episodes was actually for him and Yoonji to have some kind of a standoff, because he was one of the main perpetrators of her embarrassment with the video and making her take her clothes off. And if anybody has an axe to grind with him, it's her. So I kind of thought that that's where they were going to go with it, but maybe later that'll happen.
Possibly. But at this point, by the time we leave episode 9, Yoonji and Gwi-nam are like miles apart.
Right. That's why I was sort of like, I didn't do that.
She's basically like probably in military custody or something like that.
Yeah, certainly seems like she's next on the cutting block for vivisection.
Yeah.
So after the and HA, you called this last time. You were like, that door says it'll open if there's a fire. And after after Yoonji starts a fire inside in the teacher's lounge, the doors unlock. And I thought that actually the scene where she was out in the playing field and just kept seeing people who were really mean to her, that series of shots, I thought that was pretty good. Only just underscores her rage.
Yeah, and we get her motivation. It's very clear what her motivation is, and now nobody can stop her, and she is in a position of power too. So weirdly, she and Gwi-nam are in kind of similar situations. They just don't realize it. They have a lot of common ground. They could be best friends in another universe.
Their drive is very similar. That's why I'm confused about Namra. Other than just being like kind of a cold sociopath with a heart of gold, I don't understand what her major drive is. It's not just Bear Sue, I feel like.
No.
So what? So she's a little bit. She stands apart from those two as a half-beat.
But I did think with the fire thing, there was a few things. Well, so when I saw that on the door, I thought the kids were going to figure out some way to set off the alarm. I didn't really anticipate that Yoonji was going to try to burn the school down, which was great. What I don't know is like, did the sprinkler systems go off, or is this building still burning? Because they're kind of like up on that roof for hours.
There were scenes of the sprinklers going off.
Yeah, and I don't think she's a very good fire starter. Yeah, she kind starts the fire and then she just pieces out and go finds a bicycle to ride around with. So like she doesn't stick around to make sure the whole place, burns all the way to the ground. So
I guess I wanted to see more of the flames being completely quenched or something, because that's all I kept thinking about. I was like, well, is it gonna collapse the rest of the school? Is it like what's gonna happen? Anyway.
I don't think there was enough fuel in that office other than just papers. Like if she'd found some wooden furniture or something, but also that school is like all tile and plaster. I don't know that it's going to burn without a massive amount of accelerant.
You have like the zombies running through and then kind of running out of there. So I kind of thought that they would be their own little fire starters and kind of keep it going. But I digress. In any case, it gets them up to the roof. And we see a little bit more. I mean, because obviously Bearsu, and like they have seen him. Sorry, they have seen what their faces when Namra throws Gwi-nam down the stairs are pretty good. But it's sort of like this moment where they don't know what to do and they kind of talk about it. And obviously they knew from before that something was going on with her, but this is confirmation. And then they talk about the fact that Bearsu had thrown Gwi-nam down, like 4 stories or something is what he said. And so they're kind of talking through that. But I don't like they didn't come to a very good solution here, in my opinion. But
Bearsu closes that argument by saying, "Hey, would you leave Anjo behind?" Yeah, and Changsan, of course, is going to be like, "Yeah, okay, cool, we're cool." But we've also had the scene of Cholsul seeing them all get out onto the roof when the 2 soldiers are like looking at their guns or something, not looking outside.
Yeah, not very observant, not a high level of situational awareness.
And he's just like, okay, yep, I see them, but I'm gonna just look uncomfortable. But let's just keep going, pretend they're not there. So our team of, I guess there's 9 of them, as it gets pointed out later. Our 9 survivors are waving, and then there's a nice SOS sign making montage.
Yeah, it's really funny that as they were doing this, I'm like, do they even know what that means?
And then there's a whole conversation about it.
Like a whole thing around it. I even wrote in my notes, and then they started talking about it. I'm like, all right, scratch that.
Well, here's the poll. What did you guys think it stood for? Or what do you think it stands for?
It's Save Our Ship.
Yeah, I thought it was Save Our Souls.
Yes, you can Google, you look it up, and it may stand for either of those things, but I don't think it actually does. I think it's just like an SOS, like it's an easy thing to put in Morse code. I don't know. It doesn't. I've always thought it was Save Our Souls too, and I think that's just urban legend.
I thought it was specifically for the ship thing, but maybe I'm making that up.
It was established for maritime use. I'm doing a little bit of research on the internet right now.
We're doing research while we're online.
I think it probably is just that it's easy to do in Morse code.
It is associated with phrases such as "Save Our Souls" or "Save Our Ship."
I guess the reason why I thought about it was that was because that it was like sailors tended to use it. So I guess that's what I just assumed, and I apparently am wrong.
Daesu comes up with a couple of, I forget what his one of them doesn't even have any S's in it. I think it's just like a direct translation from Korean. It's like, rescue us quickly. I'm like, that doesn't...
quick. He said something like "quick to save" or something like that.
But it's another one of their like Daesu driven poop conversation style discussions, which I like. And it's got like twangy guitar music. It's every episode, not every episode, but a lot of these episodes have a moment like this, and it's a nice little break. Even though Gwi-nam has been on the inside of that door, punching it until he breaks his arm, which is pretty disgusting. So Yoonji has found a bicycle. She rides down the road. It is another sort of scene that is like almost idyllic if it weren't for this, like the what we're looking at, which is zombies and vehicles and destruction.
Well, it's kind of like a cool sequence with her because it's basically in this world where she had no power at all, and now she's suddenly top of the food chain and gets to kind of see all these people that were terrible to her. And we see that sequence that she's like walking through the field, and then she hops on the bike and she's just like, all right, I'm gonna just do this. And she's just gliding through this complete city, the city that's just like in chaos, and kind of merrily going along for a bit anyway.
I thought it was
Um,
interesting in these two episodes that these three half-bees that we know have all kind of had I'm a powerful, I'm a god, I rule this school sort of moment. I mean, that's mostly
yep.
Gwi-nam, but also Yoonji to an extent. And then
Yeah.
in this episode, as like the military gets more involved, you see that they are pretty vulnerable also. I mean, you know, when she finally gets taken down at the end of episode or in the middle of episode 9, she fights 5 soldiers at
Yeah.
once, but they, you know, their like supposed invulnerability is shaken pretty quickly.
Um, and then we've got a little bit more with the, we have a lot with the kids on the roof, bonding, basically talking around this fire, talking to each other about secrets.
Yeah,
And
that's
it,
a little more melodrama, and I don't understand this compulsion to do truth or truth,
yeah,
I guess, on the roof around that fire, but it does take up a lot of time. I was more interested in the scenes of Jay-ik on the roof with orange
yeah,
gibberish, which happened
no,
earlier in the day.
I liked the kids on the roof playing, Truth or Dare or whatever. That it seemed very, very true to high school to me, and I liked their little grasp at any kind of normalcy. So I was touched by those scenes.
I kind of
Even though
liked it.
they were pretty like brutally honest, like saying, I never liked you, Namra, I always hated you.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, it's truth or dare when you've just been when everyone's suffering from PTSD, basically. Like they've just been through some unimaginably brutal shit, so they're not gonna, you know, not gonna sugarcoat things anymore. But
Right. But I also think that they're highlighting a lot of different things here. One is the whole thing that high school is really awful for anybody to go through, but there's, that whole idea that, oh, that person's really popular, or that person has everything going for them, and sort of the playing ground is evened out here because everybody's kind of going through their own um, you know, personal problems and hell and all of that stuff. So, and assumptions that people are making about each other, or the way that, and I think they're pretty honest though too about their own sort of like negative actions towards each other. And then, basically saying at the end of this, I'd sit on a roof around a fire with you again, which I think is kind of sweet.
That is
Um,
sweet. And it's
I
great
will,
that Chung San finally comes out and tells Anjo he likes her, but it doesn't go
that's a
so
rough,
well.
that's a rough go of it for poor
It
Johnson.
it's also, I found it kind of awesome that Daesu admits that he has the hots for Hari, the archery
I
lady,
know.
which is why he's been calling Woo Jin, I think is his name,
Yep, brother.
brother-in-law since episode 1. And I had never understood what that was about. And then it's like, oh my gosh, that's incredible.
But
Uh,
also, okay, the other cultural thing that, the whole song that Dice he sings is very I mean, it's something that they all know clearly. But the translation is really strange
yeah,
about like
those
like
lyrics.
the lyrics are kind of rough, or the translation of those lyrics are rough, but I thought that was kind of like a cool thing, because this is just something so different to hear. But
So it's like a song about studying all day and then sweating or drooling onto your books and then going to get some food afterwards or something along those lines.
yeah, but it's also like there's this great stew that my mom makes and noodles, and this is like this whole, but it's like it's just, I just thought that was kind of like just like a cool little addition.
It was a nice sing along
Right. But you got to have a sing along around a campfire.
every so often.
But I think we should talk about Jayik and Orange Gibberish, because that was also, I loved that particular sequence.
Jay-ik kind of treats everybody around him like they're a dumbass. He's
They
kind of
kind of are.
yeah, no, but it crosses the line is that in this episode, like when the college student, the graduate student or whatever he calls him, comes back with the bus, which is awesome. They're stuck on the roof. He and Orange Gibberish, Jake and Orange Gibberish, and then the graduate student comes rolling up with the two kids in a big school bus, knocking over zombies, and basically there to save him. I expected him to press the horn and have it be like, and then like they get in the bus, and then he's like, "Why'd you run away? You're such a jerk! Like fuck you!" And I was
that
like,
was half-hearted.
it was half-hearted, but it came off a little too mean. I don't think the actor's playing it quite as like, gentle ribbing as he should be. It sounded really,
but
really
you know
cruel.
what, Kyle? Because even the discussion with Orange Gibberish and Jay Ick on the roof, there's a whole whole conversation about traitors, and
Mhm.
specifically related to the college, the grad student. And Orange Gibberish is like, oh, we can just cancel him. You have to cancel traitors. So there's definitely some undertone, something that they're trying to get across here.
Mhm.
And I do think, I do think grad student certainly has redeemed himself in this case, and in a pretty big way.
Oh, yeah.
I liked the whole thing, and and he's stepping up in ways that I don't think we anticipated, because he tells the little girl to shut her eyes, just
Yeah.
like a kid told her and stuff like that. So
He's weirdly irrepressible. Like, even though he's being, kind of kicked while he's driving, he's like, "Hey, I came back for you. It's all good." And when they're getting lit up by the military later, he's like, "Oh, we're being saved." It's insane. But I really did enjoy the conversations between Jay Ick and Orange Gibberish, where he's just like, "What, like and subscribe? You think you're going to get anything with that? You freaking idiot! If you were my brother, I would have killed you." And I mean, I don't know how much is getting lost in translation, and I don't know about the delivery if it is a little bit too hardcore. But Jay Ick is just always he's dealing out some pretty harsh language, and I did like his attempt to distract the zombies by throwing buckets, even though it turned out they didn't need to do it.
But also, like, despite the fact that that was like a humorous exchange, Orange Gibberish does have a point, which is that nobody outside has known what's been going on.
Yeah.
And even though he did not necessarily execute it in a good way, he's just like, oh, people should know what's happening. So I don't, I think that there's a couple of interesting observations you can make about that. And, I think that's deliberate. So they're making him into this ridiculous character, but he was showing some things, whether people believe it or not. He is somebody who came in and was showing what was actually happening in the town. So
yeah, as evidenced by the comments on his like live stream, like, some people probably did like take this situation more seriously by watching what he was going through.
Right. So, but anyway, and we have them in the bus, and then our poor Yoonji, her idyllic bicycle ride cut short by a bus. And I do have to say, like, the way she flew off the bike and then gets up, and Jay Ick's like, "Are you okay?" That was just kind of like, it was ridiculous. It's very dark comedy, but she's got a little like cut on her head, but she manages to get up off the ground.
The Foley work makes it sound like it's a pretty deep wound, because it's really icky. The sound of her touching it sounds like she's probably putting her finger into her skull.
Yep.
But also, like, the wounds that this girl has on her body, I mean, I guess there is some sort of healing factor for the half-bees, but how did she get into the quarantine camp at all?
Well, like, because she puts her hair up and you can't see anything on her neck or shoulders anymore. And that's, I mean, we all saw the scene where she had like something like 3 or 4 zombies on her, biting her neck and shoulders. So that's all gone. So there must be something that's healing in terms of that, because there's no way she would have made it into the camp with bites on her, right?
That you guys are actually helping solve a plot problem with me from the following episode. So this is helpful, because just to briefly skip ahead, in the next episode, they realize that you can have what they're calling asymptomatic zombies, and they kind of lock down the whole military camp and don't let anyone else in. And the main military guy is like, anybody could be carrying this and be a unsymptomatic person. And I was just kind of like, look for bites, dude. Like, just like look for people who have bite wounds on their body. They're pretty distinctive kinds of wounds. And if someone doesn't have a bite wound, then they're definitely not a zombie. But if there is some sort of healing factor and they are checking for bites on the way in and they still didn't catch, that Yoonji was infected, then that kind of closes that that plot hole for me. So
yeah, and I mean,
that's interesting.
I think it has to, because I mean, they're showing, even when she's walking through the field, I mean, she was chewed upon
Yeah.
all over her shoulders and everything. There was no question about it.
And exhibit
Um,
Gwi-nam, right?
yeah,
Like after he breaks his wrist, like his hand is completely mangled after he's punched that door. Then you have a scene of him waking up later and he climbs up the drain pipe. Like his hand is now functional again. So it
and you
just,
can kind of hear that popping and whatever. And even
yeah,
when he got thrown, thrown off the building, when he's getting up, he kind of like is realigning himself. I mean, it's freaky to watch, but I do think that there has to be some super healing something.
yeah.
But yeah, you're right, Kyle. I just thought it was odd. I was kind of wondering if maybe she had hit him, but like I couldn't figure out how she even got into the camp. But I guess that's how. So other than the head wound she has, nothing else is kind of indicating.
Pretty much immediately here, they're picked up by the military, right? That happens like as they're like looking at her on the ground.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we don't see them get actually like
Right,
picked up
right.
so much as
Shot
shot at many times. But
they don't stay in their bus for very long.
But yeah. Seoul University is right in his optimistic opinion about that exchange, where he's like, "This is a rescue." I'm like, no, it seems like you're going to get killed. But okay. There's another part of episode 8 which I found to be kind of sad, which is the Nyan element.
Yeah, the Nyan's and we find out what happens to Ms. Park.
Yeah, if we believe that, I mean, it's flashback, but I think there's no reason to think that didn't go that way. But Nyan, who we last had like, in episode whatever 3 or 4, who was just irredeemably a bad person, like had murdered Gyung-soo through her underhanded devious mechanics, now is like fully on her way to redemption anyway, through the flashback with Mrs. Park, whose final words to her are, "Go back to your friends, do one nice thing." And she's watched the videos of the classmates saying like, "Oh, I'm so hungry." And I think the icing on the cake is Chong San's testimonial, which we haven't seen on the show until she watches it, where he starts off saying, "Hey, mom and dad, I think you're probably great. Oh, and by the way, Gyung-soo's dead and it was my fault." And I think that's like a huge moment for Nyan. And honestly, I'm like, Chong-san is a real stand-up guy. Like, he's not going to throw anybody under the bus during this. He's just trying to keep it positive, other than the fact that he's taking the blame and saying we should have given Gyung-soo a job. But I really found that to be quite affecting, and emotionally it hit me. It was good.
But it's also a little bit weird because even with the flashback with Ms. Park, she's taking responsibility for why, like saying that she backed
She backed her
Nayeon
into a corner. Yeah.
She backed her into a corner, and it's like, okay, yeah, I guess I could see sort of that, except Nayeon made the decision to take an infected zombie thing and put it on him.
Nyan was absolutely wrong. But I think what she's seeing here is people modeling behavior of standing up and taking responsibility, whereas Nyan never took responsibility, right?
True. And so then she's on her way to doing it because she's like, okay, I'm going to get food. I'm going to bring it to my friends, and hopefully they'll forgive me. And unfortunately, her path to redemption is cut short.
So short.
Well, I think this is something that we might come back to at the end of episode 9 as well. But this show is very cut and dry about karmic retribution.
Yes, it is.
So like if you do something bad in this show, you're like pretty much guaranteed to become a zombie. Like it's just like, and it's often very like immediate, like next episode kind of thing. Like, so the character arcs getting cut short is, I think, like it's by design. It has to happen to her at the most kind of like in the dramatic sense of the word, the most ironic moment.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. I'm also gratified that somebody is finally thinking about fucking food.
Yeah.
You're kidding.
Even if it doesn't actually make its way to the roof. But we're going to come back to this next episode as well, where there's just something that drives me totally insane from a logistics perspective. But I'm sure they would have been grateful for that food had she made it up there. But now my boy Gwi-nam.
Gwi-nam, he kind of toys with her just a little bit too. Like it's a 30-second conversation where he's like, "Hey, you hungry?" is that food? I have to get to the roof. And then then he just kills her.
Yeah.
We don't see her turn. I think we can all assume it. We also don't see Mrs. Park turn. And I'm curious if her driven nature to protect children will express itself in becoming a half-bee.
Didn't we see her kind of outside of the
she was
room?
Outside the room. She was getting twitchy, but they all get twitchy. The half-bees get twitchy too. And then she stumbles away and you don't see her face entirely.
Well, maybe we will see her again.
Right, so is it a given that people bitten by half-bees become half-bees?
I mean, we've seen only like...
No, the dean turned into a regular zombie after Yoonji ate his guts.
Yeah, okay. So it's not a given. But
so Nayeon might be a smart zombie, or she might just be a regular zombie.
I think she's done because he really like... We see like that.
There's so much blood.
There's a lot of blood, and I feel like
he's eating her finger.
Yeah, and I feel like in the next episode we see like her guts all over the floor, like it's her on the floor in the hallway. I think so.
That's someone else in the stairwell. I think.
Oh, is it?
That was a previous that somehow somebody had gotten cut in half in on day one.
Also, we should mention the other group of students that's in the gymnasium, the archery practice area. This is not like a huge part of the show, except that they're in there. They're also kind of seeing the helicopter leaving. There's a lot of discussion over the colleges. So they're also bonding in the gymnasium, and they have their injured friend in there with them. But Hari is like, talking about how she didn't make the national team and is being comforted by, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the other. Mijin, who's just like, well, if everybody's zombies, you'll make the team. But again, there's like, it's just sort of the discussion about the pressure that's on these kids to like get into college and what happens if they don't. And we've seen this as like a repeating theme throughout the show. And so I feel like that commentary is probably going to continue.
I gotta feel like the counter argument to like it's so hard to get into college has to be now like there's probably 100,000 fewer applicants.
Yeah, so, maybe. But I think the point is that like the classism and the economic disparity, like this all starts here basically. And so I'm just wanted to, since they keep bringing it up in the show, it should,
I just get frustrated by these discussions that seem so out of touch with their situation, where they're like, yeah, it's hard to get into college. Like, dude, you have to survive.
Well, what do people do when they're in like weird situations? They talk about things that are completely inane and normal. So I think that probably makes sense. I do like the archery instruction because it's not very easy to do that. So I did like how they didn't make it easy for, and Hari's like, yeah, it's like, it's giving instruction, but it's like a very difficult thing to do. So I did like that, although I'm suspecting they'll all be amazing now, right? Now that they've had this time to practice, but we'll see.
Like she said, even a bad archer is better than no archer, right?
True.
And so this episode ends with Gwi-nam getting to the rooftop. Anjo is being depressed on one side of the roof because somehow Chang-san admitting that he's in love with her means that now she's not cool with him anymore. So they're having like a separate moment, and Gwi-nam comes up on the roof right next to her, which leads right into the next episode with like Bear Su and Chang-san everybody really trying to fight Gwi-nam, and this is the part where I'm a little frustrated with the mechanics of the half-bees. And maybe Gwi-nam is super pumped up because he just ate Nayeon and he's like all full of extra vigor because of that. And meanwhile, Namra hasn't eaten a person, and she used up her strength throwing him down the stairs earlier. But that's
how I read it, by the way.
You did
that she's hungry. Because later in this episode, she talks about like
feeling weak.
She feels weak. Yeah.
I thought that was just because it was raining.
One of the things I did like, which I was a little disappointed in the fight scene after, was how he made his way to the roof and you could hear him on the pipe and it coming up. So I thought that was like really great. And I can be on Kyle's side in a way just because he's such a great enemy to have.
It's like the Terminator. He just keeps coming back,
It's the third time he's been I guess he wasn't killed after Namra threw him down the stairs, but he should have been injured at least. But yeah, comes on back.
And I've noted that a lot of the times the thing that they kind of like the thing with his eye, either depending on when they're showing him or not, like he's looking a little David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust, he's looking a little Terminator, then it's suddenly like totally cleaned up and he looks normal. So I think that's kind of a continuity thing, but or maybe it's the weird thing where, you know, we sometimes see Namra sort of shift. So maybe there's something weird with the virus that makes him look either more or less zombified.
The other missed opportunity I think they had here is in the initial rooftop fight, way back in episode 1, that was Nayan who was on the roof with them. Is that true?
No.
Who was the girl who was on the roof with
She
them?
was patient Beta. She was the girl who got bit by the hamster and then ended up going to hospital and spreading it to the entire city.
Yes, thank you. I thought there was kind of a little bit of a parallel with the two rooftop fights, but they didn't like emphasize it at all. Like they didn't shoot it in the same way. And I thought it would have been nice to kind of like tie narratively some stuff back to that initial fight, since some of the same people were there. But now that I'm understanding who was on that rooftop, it would have been narratively difficult to get all those people back again. But I was like, couldn't Naya have come up to the roof? And then, you know, there's even a stronger kind of like parallel between the two, but getting my people confused.
But she does. I mean, look, Namra does throw him off, so she succeeds finally with that.
Yeah, but they don't even waste much time in the show before they show him getting back up again. But he's definitely more banged up. One of his arms and one of his legs aren't working properly, and it kind of stays that way for the rest of the episode. Because he also there's this dry thunderstorm that's been starting also, and they don't take too long before they start showing that the lightning and the thunder is really having an effect on the on Gwi-nam and on Namra, because
and the full zombies too. So
the two big things
is just that they run around looking crazy.
The two big things that happen in this episode, like essentially half the episode is the soldiers coming to retrieve the laptop, and the other half is the thunder and lightning storm. So before it starts raining, the helicopter comes with the strike team on it.
Right. And then, I mean, and there's a lot of flipping back and forth, like finally, you're like, okay, they're going to get the laptop. Finally, these guys are going to get rescued. Although I assumed that they weren't going to, because we still have Anjo's dad out there.
He's out there
trying to get to the school. So I was like, they just can't pull them away, or maybe they'll pull them away and he just as he gets there or something like that. And then we also see a lot more just with the military and how they're sort of processing the idea that this information is out there, because Jayik has gotten in and gotten, like, when they're rescued, he's talking to them about the fact that this laptop exists, and that there's potentially a cure or research that could help them with this. So, you know, like the flipping back and forth, sort of seeing what's happening at the quarantine camp and then at the school, and the sort of the communication between, you know, the team and the commanding officer who's back at the base, is really, I kind of liked it, but it was also like this really tough, there's some really tough scenes as they figure it out. And this is also juxtaposed over the attack at the quarantine camp, when they figure out that there are asymptomatic half-Bs or whatever they are.
I mean, we know that there are. We also know that there's only like 4 of them. We haven't seen Mr. Lee since he came back in the police station. He must be out there too. Yeah. But I mean, and maybe there's been more who have been made in the interim that we haven't seen. But it's yeah. So as an audience, we're like, oh, don't, you know, rescue these poor children. For Pete's sake, one of them is a half-B. Okay, granted. I thought it was funny when they take her temperature, Namra's, and they're like, oh, she's a little chilly. Let's give her a blanket. I'm like, isn't the cold temperature exactly what you're looking for? Like, this is, or what is the temperature thing that they're doing if it's not to find the cold ones?
Well, I think they still think it's like, they think there's like fever or something, maybe. I don't know.
I think it's really cold, because when they take the temperature of the people who have the virus, it's like, and this all the thermometer readings are in Celsius, so I'm not super great at converting, but it's like 29 instead of 36 or something like that.
But that's, I mean, and then there's also, you know, seeing how like the decisions that the military is having to make, because this is a bunch of kids on the roof, and then the command is, oh, if they fight you, shoot them.
But then he gets really into the idea of shooting them, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Like they're
like
not even
Yeah, it's
fighting.
like too into. They're not even doing anything, and he's like, "Shoot them now!"
I know, and the soldiers on the roof are just like, just be quiet, please.
Poor
Like,
Jimin, man. She even like she had her hands on the helicopter after being winched up there,
oh, I know.
and then
It's
they
terrible.
send her back down. I mean, if I was that master sergeant or whatever his rank was, I would just say, "You kids all lie down, put your hands on your heads," instead of this like standoff where he keeps wasting ammo into the air. But I also, I mean, I get it. Like he at least is not a terrible person like his boss, who's like, just shoot those children. And I like the fact that they showed that he was super unhappy with the way that that unfolded. But I do also want to pay attention to the fact that it was really cool the way they went into the science
Oh yeah.
classroom
Oh, yeah.
and had overlapping fields of fire, and they were bounding in their coming in and getting back out again. And they used the helicopter for the light support. I mean, it was just so cool. That was just a really cool scene.
But they had no problem with the zombies either. Like,
No,
this is not a situation where like the strike force is like, oh my god, there's too many, we're under attack. Like, no, they're just like, we
Taking care of it.
totally got this, no problem. Even even non-zombified is just a bunch of high school students that were just like shooting in the face.
Right. And then we also have the kids in the gymnasium always left out of the party.
Yeah.
And I did like the idea that, wherever the helicopters were going, because of the sound, the rest of the zombies are kind of like tracking that. And so they had to sort of like they were in a bad way because they were trying to like get in over there, and then realized that the sound of the helicopters was going to drive them all right towards them and things like that. So I thought that was great, just editing and storytelling on that end of things. But those kids, it feels like they're never going to, they're in even a worse shape than the kids on the roof.
they are, but they're also the badasses. Like it
I
doesn't.
know.
Like, it's frustrating to me how little progress that team has made in the last
they're
4
now
episodes.
saddled. They're now saddled with the injured guy, which is really slowing them down.
Yeah, how deep can that wound be? There's not even like visible blood. I know they've bandaged it and put clothes on over it, but he's not still bleeding. Like, just please, that guy can walk. He can get up and walk.
I don't know. It's a pretty deep belly wound or something that he's got going on.
Yeah.
I was kind of on the commander's side in a way. I mean, they were gonna bring Namra on that helicopter. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's not a theoretical threat that he's protecting against. Like, he actually was totally right that there was a unsymptomatic zombie amongst that group. So
yes, but murder the children is still like where you can't.
okay. Murder the children was a step too far, but I did agree that maybe getting the laptop back so they can review the material should really be the most important thing at the moment, and they don't want that helicopter crashing halfway back.
Well, also remember the commander has seen the footage where Cholsu gets totally destroyed by a half-B,
and yeah, Yunji is like taking out 5 soldiers, or it takes 5 soldiers to restrain her.
Right.
I do think there was a missed opportunity on the rooftop where Changsan or somebody could have said, please, we haven't had any food or water in 3 days. Can you please give us
some MREs? Yeah.
And like some bottles of water, please. They don't even, I mean, I can get it. They wouldn't have the presence of mind to ask for that, but at least that's, they definitely had that stuff on the helo. They could just throw it down. But no.
But they did get the rain. Don't forget, they got the rain.
But they didn't
collect it at all.
I know, Kyle. I knew that thought was gonna.
Standing there, I'm like, get a bucket, get a tray, get your shoes out, like any collect. You're gonna be slurping this off the tarmac in 4 hours if you don't find some way to collect this stuff. And they're just standing there with their hands out and their mouths open. I was so stupid. I was so angry.
But we also, aside from that, we also have the assemblywoman Yoonhee, who is, it seems like she's doing the right thing and taking responsibility for Anjo's dad, going to rescue her and be basically being like, oh, I'm so sympathetic because he's a dad going to get his daughter. And then it turns out that she's actually using this for political clout, to basically get more votes down the line. So she has ulterior motives. And I just thought that was an interesting little separate narrative happening.
We'll see how separate it stays, because it kind of continues to build as the camp goes into further quarantine mode. And did you notice that the camera kept zooming in on her face during her testimonial? Like you could even see it on the little zoom bar at the bottom, like the software of the camcorder view. Some, like, nobody was touching it, but it was just doing this automatically. It was zooming in on her face as she gave her impassioned speech. I thought it was overwrought. I think they didn't need to say, I didn't think she needed to end with, "I will always be on the side of the powerless citizens." That to me was a little too much. And she could have just said the thing about wanting to, support the parent, and then left it at that, because the rest of it could just be inferred. Right. But that's just me. Soju has been in the streets meanwhile, trying to get to school. And we've seen him like draw on a map. He has to cross the river. He's got to it's basically like a mile. It looks like he has to go through the city. And he's doing great. He's making a lot of progress. Then he has a conversation with a mannequin. And then this guy apparently is right behind him, who's crashed a car right behind him. And he's faced with a quandary, a moral decision as a firefighter and like a rescue guy. Can he rescue this pregnant woman from a car crash and her distraught husband?
But there's honestly very little he can do, like, unless you have a jaws of life, which he doesn't. And I feel terrible. I think he's in this horrible position because he understands more than anything, because he's going to rescue his own daughter. But there really is, I don't know that there was anything that he can do here.
No. Well, and he does more than he ought to. He does more than might be sensible by giving this guy his shotgun and some ramen and water. And then he's like, "I'm out." It almost goes badly, but then, the guy's, I guess, not a murderer, but he is going to die. Like, he and his wife are done. And Soju just kind of runs off into the darkness. I am worried about him, because I think when we leave everybody at the end of this episode, maybe he'll just like reunite with them at the school right at this critical moment we're about to get into in episode 10. But it doesn't feel, it feels like they might miss each other. And I'm a little concerned.
It's going to be a misconnection, I think. But basically, now that they know that the zombies are sensitive to lightning and are a bit disorganized or distracted because of the thunder and lightning, they're making a plan. And also, honestly, they know that they're on their own now because the military's abandoned them. So they're like, well, we can't just stay here.
Props to Chung-sen for coming to that conclusion.
Yeah. And so, they make a whole plan. There's I do feel like this is sort of sad. I feel so badly for Daisu.
Nobody wants to hold his hand.
Nobody wants to hold Daisu's hand. And even though
I felt so bad for him,
he's got the great singing voice. I admit this impacted me more than I was like, oh, Daisu.
He even makes the first move. Like he's the first one to thrust out his hand to somebody, and then they just
everyone.
All of them
his hand is like always there out of focus as people are having conversations.
It's so sad. But anyway, they're making a plan to get to the mountain, which I believe is the same mountain that Orange Gibberish came down to get into the town. So I think maybe all points lead to the mountain at some, I
have a question about the rooftop folks, and trying to think back over all these episodes. Like, obviously the archery squad are stone cold killers. Like they're doing great. They've got arrows to the necks of like 20 zombies littering out around the gymnasium. Have the rooftop gang actually killed any zombie? They pushed the guy out the window, but have they actually killed any zombies at all so far?
I think so. They've hit them or blocked them off. I can't recall that they have.
I can't remember a single pointed object through the head or throat that team has done, and they don't have any weapons at all. And so that is what makes me think that they must meet up with the archery squad on their way up the mountain, because if they get into just open terrain with zombies around and no weaponry, like I have no idea what these kids are gonna do because they have no track record of killing zombies at all.
Well, the only thing that they've done is, they kind of jumped out of the way to get them out the window. That's what they've
Yeah,
done, and that's what they did with
they've done a lot of pushing out of windows and off of
right,
roofs, but
But
that
they
doesn't
always
kill
get
them.
up and run away.
Yeah.
right, but not with implementations, right? Not with
Yeah.
anything that we've seen. Not what we've seen from the bathroom crew. So no, you're right. We'll have to see what happens. And then, we also, I'm guessing that the archery team people will somehow maybe join up with them or something like that, because I feel like everybody's kind of trying to get away from the school at this point. And my wish that Johnson's mom would somehow take down Gwi-nam or have some battle of protection was dashed at the end of this episode.
So tragic, so predictable, and yet so tragic. Like as soon as they're running along the outside of the school, I'm like, they're gonna run into his mom on their way out of school, and there
And
she is.
I mean, that's the thing though, is that like, I don't know, like the fact that it's even more horrible because she's wearing that apron with his face plastered right on it.
Although
Like,
thankfully it's just out of frame. Like he can't quite see it because the truck is right there. Yeah.
Yeah, the
But
way
that
that they
was
handled
pretty
this though too, like having him have a vision of her being alive, but
yeah.
also kind of intermixed with her zombie face. Yeah, getting those feels. I mean, if we'll see how this goes. This is where the episode ends. All of his friends are underneath that truck. I don't know how they aren't seeing her feet, but maybe they're taking a left turn or something. This is also the truck that the spiky-haired bully was hiding underneath. So I wonder if he's around.
Yeah, maybe he'll make an appearance.
Hope not.
I again did not go ahead just because it's like, it was very tempting, but I did not.
Such a commitment and time to try and move ahead.
I gotta say, like, most episodes in the streaming or most series in the streaming area have settled into this kind of like 6 to 10 episode range for length of a season. Or of a series if it's a one off kind of thing. And I just am totally unprepared to commit like 12. It seems so long, and I'm just like, how long can this story go on? And what baffles me about it is that we used to regularly make these kind of commitments on a way bigger scale. Like Lost was like 25 hour-long episodes in one season, and it ran for 7 seasons. It's like hundreds of hours of that television show, and I just can't. That's 3 seasons worth of material in this modern age, and it just blows my mind how much we used to just commit to one storyline. Because I'm finding, I'm enjoying the show a lot, but I'm finding 12 episodes to be a surprisingly large lift in this.
Right, but I think that the difference is format too, because now we have the capability of binging, especially with something like this. It's released all at once. Lost was, a one time a week thing, and
8 months at a time. Yeah, that's
right.
true.
Like you didn't. It was definitely spread out, so the time commitment didn't feel quite so onerous, I think. But in this, I think it's honestly just the difference in how we consume stuff now.
It would be really interesting to see the data, the metrics on how this show specifically has been consumed, considering its massive length and how long the episodes are.
Yeah, there's a variability in episode length too, where Lost was always a brisk 42 minutes without commercials, and this is anywhere from 40 to 120 minutes per episode.
I get the impression, since we are seeing more like reaction videos on YouTube and people writing like, this is the end of this is what happens at the end of All of Us Are Dead, and here's my thoughts about how season 2 could go. Like I feel like I'm seeing more of that now, so it's taking people a long time to get through all of this, and it should. Whereas a lot of other shows that drop on a day, you get a lot of those reaction news and videos almost immediately. Yeah, and it's kind of insane.
Well, and also, I mean, the things that we talked about at the beginning was how are they going to fill this much time in this many episodes, and if each episode is X amount of time, and with a storyline like this, I do think that and Stuart and I talked a little bit about this, I think last week. Like, I definitely think there's places where they could have edited and didn't have to like go so far. I think they probably could have cut this down.
Oh yeah, it's flabby. I mean, and as we talked about in a prior episode, like they do a lot of the same stuff multiple times. Like not one helicopter comes, but two helicopters come, and like they, there's not one stairwell fight, but like 4 stairwell fights at this point. So like, yeah, there's a lot of editing that could have been done, but the pace is part of the appeal to it in some ways. Like it's it would feel different if they were just like, bam, 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 everything is moving forward.
So predictions for episode 10. I'm thinking archery crew, Soju, and homeroom 2-5 probably all get reunited.
I think they're going to combine and sort of join forces, and then Kyle's fear about this group that has no killing skills, like no survival skills really, maybe okay. I think obviously Gwi-nam and Namra have to have another showdown potentially. I feel like somehow the OG professor guy, the maths teacher, has to somehow make an appearance in here, maybe.
Other than in his vlog, which is really depressing.
Right.
It's horrible.
These vlog episodes where he's just like, I have some hope. I have no hope. I went to a shaman. He gave me this piece of paper. He said it was going to fix everything. Crying scene.
Right. And then always in the background of his vlogs, it's like his wife and his son rolling around on the floor, making noise. I wonder what their neighbors are thinking, because like they're not quiet. And they're just kind of chained. I mean, the other question all along I've had is like, okay, so his son is kind of in the bed. He's got his wife like chained to the bedstead on the floor. It's just like he's I think we can all agree that he went off the deep end quite a while ago. And so I don't know what we'll see more of this. I'm sure we'll see more of his vlog as we continue the episodes, and more of him,
as you said. I think he has to come back. We'll see in what way. I think the quarantine camp is going to get overrun somehow. I imagine anyway. Now that there's 2 zombies in there.
Do you think that Yoonji is going to? I feel like she's going to take a bite out of somebody.
Why aren't these 2 zombies that they have gagged?
Right.
Yeah. Let's see. I have 2. I have a short-term and a long-term prediction. My short-term prediction is I think that the way that the archery gang is going to unite with the crew is that they're going to save Chong-san from his mom by shooting his mom. So I think like she's going to like run at him and he's going to freeze because it's his mom, and then like arrow to the face. That's my short-term prediction. And then it like creates this like irrational but like emotional like rift between the 2 groups.
I could see, because he did freeze and that was kind of the end of the episode. So
they're just like emerging from the little like storage cubby that they've been hiding in or something like that.
But we have really very little idea of how far away they actually are in that gym versus the main school building. It hasn't really been that well established, other than that one flyover shot. But yeah, I think it's either him or it's either them or Soju. Yeah, Soju has no more weapons, so I don't know what he's gonna do.
And then the second thing is that like Chong-san has like a really strong like martyr complex.
Yeah,
like he's constantly being like, you guys go, I'll stay, like I'll go out here, like go on without me, leave me here, I'm gonna go fight this. And so like I just feel like that's gonna come back to bite him at some point, and he's gonna like basically make the ultimate sacrifice, because they've just been setting it up too much that he's like, has this almost like pathological need to sacrifice himself for his
but don't you think he's just mirroring his mom's actions, because that's what she did?
It's right? True. So and she's a zombie,
and now she's a zombie. So I think, well, I also think that the impact of the fact that Anjo has basically rejected him, or was upset about the fact, I mean, the whole thing.
Yeah, you're right. She has basically rejected him.
Yeah, like he's on. It's like you feel you have I feel so badly for him when he's on the roof and he's like, you don't have to like me back. And it's like so awful. And, and maybe she'll come around because we do have an inkling that she might have some of those feelings for him, or at least cares deeply for him. But, she had just put him into the friend zone or whatever you might want to call it. But I kind of feel like because she's not returning those feelings and he's basically like, you don't have to like me back, but I'm still going to protect you and go all out for you. I feel like you're right, Kyle, that's going to not end well for him. And he even, I don't know, he's been doing this kind of all along. Like he's been very worried about her welfare and just kind of put himself out there in a way that's probably not the healthiest in this particular environment. So we shall see.
Yeah. But we shall see next time, I guess, on Reanimated when we come back to do episodes 10 and 11. And that will leave only one episode, 12. I don't think that we can do 3 in one episode.
I don't think we can.
Yeah.
Sadly. So that means we have a couple more times to get back together before we can put all of us are dead to bed. And I, for one, am looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to being done with this show because it is just, like we've already established, it's a big sandwich.
But I think they have already renewed it for another season.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
Or they're hinting at that. I did not read the articles. As I said, I was afraid of getting spoiled. So I did not dive into it. But one of the headlines was about a season 2. So maybe
I saw a headline that talked about a season 2. I just wasn't sure if that was speculation. Yeah. We'll see. For now, though, I think we shall bid our fair listeners adieu. Come on back next time and have a listen to our next episode on All of Us Are Dead. In the meantime, you can let us know what you think on Twitter, Reanimated PCast, on email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, and our show notes with links to those articles that we talked about earlier will be at reanimatedpodcast.com. For me, Stuart, I'm saying thanks for listening and ta-ta.
Ciao. Thanks for listening.
Catch you on the flip side.
Yes. Hey!
Boom.
Flawless.